أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الغر الميامين ولعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. I welcome you all to the class, and I would like to thank the management of Babul Ilm, especially Iftikhar Bhai and Sister Afshin, and obviously everyone that's involved in this process. Allah bless them all for all their efforts that they're doing, and especially the children that are coming in and joining the classes. There's a hadith that I was going through, and that hadith is from Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, where Imam is asking one of his companions, and his name is Fudayl. Imam says that, "O Fudayl, do you sit and do you discuss the matter of our deen?" So Fudayl said, "Yes, Imam, we get together, and when we are gathering together, we are discussing about the deen, we are discussing about the things that has to do with Al-Muhammad alayhi salam." So Imam says that I like those majalises, I like those gatherings where you have discussions that are pertinent to deen, where you have learning that is relevant to the religion, and where there are learnings that has to do with Ali Muhammad alayhi salam. And Imam basically gave the du'as too. Imam just doesn't say that I love those majalises. I think if I remember correctly, Imam also says that may Allah have mercy on those majalises, right? May Allah have mercies on those gatherings where we are gathering and where we are discussing the matters of deen. Now, this gathering can be physical, obviously, like we can gather in an imam barga or in a masjid or at a place. That can be one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is obviously doing it while you are sitting in your home and you're joining in a meeting group virtually through Zoom or through any other app that has to do with collective meeting. So today, inshallah, just wanted to give you a brief background of how important it is that these gatherings that we are having, these learning sessions that we are coming across. And just remember, when we talk about things that are related to Al-Muhammad alayhi salam, that those things are just not relevant, or those things are just not specific to one stream of the deen. Like it's just not only restricted to aqidah. It's just not restricted to akhlaq. It has to do anything that has to do with deen and al-Muhammad alayhi salam. So anything that pertains to deen, anything that is relevant to deen is important. And most importantly, fiqh. I can't emphasize on this. Then obviously we don't spend that much time while we are learning fiqh, and the smallest mistakes that we do in our lives that can cost us the ibadat for years. Imagine if you did your ibadat, and once you have done it for so many years, then you come across the masala, then you come across the issue that your wudu was not right, your taharat was not right, your way of praying was not right, the way you fasted was not right, the things that are relevant, the things that are important to make an ibadah, those ingredients were not there when you were doing the thing. So obviously, at that point of time, it becomes really difficult for any human being to repeat those things again and to redo it again. And to obviously, you lose hope sometimes, and losing hope itself is a sin too. So you see, like so many things are connected when you are not acting and when you are not learning the deen properly. And it's a really common example that people have given. And I want my students and I want everyone that's listening to this lecture to ponder and to think about the example that I'm about to give. The example is that imagine if you have to go to Montreal. Imagine you're living in Toronto and you have to go to Montreal. Now, Montreal is towards the east side. And instead of going towards the east, instead of taking 401 east, you took 401 west. And now you are going at the speed of 120 kilometers and you are going really fast, right? But imagine if someone would ask you, are you going the right way? You would probably think in your mind that you're going the right way. But if you look at the GPS and if you look at the map, you are totally going opposite to the direction that you're supposed to go. right? So more you go towards that path, faster you go towards that path, you are actually going further away from the manzil. You are going further from your goal where you're supposed to be. So here we need to understand that even when we are going to journey, we always make sure we take the right highway. We always make sure we take the right directions. Why is it that when it comes to the matters of deen, why are we not learning the way we are supposed to learn? And if we have not learned the way that we're supposed to do, and if we have taken the wrong path, and then we are worshiping Allah by following that wrong path, then I can assure you that you are not moving towards Allah, you are moving further away from Allah. So this basic introduction, or the small introduction, was important for us. And inshallah, in these classes, see, if we can, like, we just go slowly, 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 and inshallah, once we have gone through the path, we would have enough knowledge that can help us in our daily activities. There was a Maulana, and Allah bless that Maulana. He said a really good thing. He said, "Look, brothers, I have done this and this degree. I have been to university. I have done masters, and mashallah, he is really knowledgeable. I have done so many things in my life. But guess what? The amount of learning that I have done in my university, I am not even applying 2% of it or 1% of it in my common life, in my daily life, right? But the things that I have learned in my deen, the things that I have learned when I went to Hausa, I'm pretty much applying every time. Like everything that I do in my life, I have to apply one of those rules. Imagine you go to washroom, if you know how to purify yourself properly, if you know the masla of the najasa and tahara, it will be a little bit easier. Not a little bit easier, it will be really easy for you to know what is najas, what is pak, and how do you do that, how you purify yourself. And then you are about to go for a prayer, you need to do the wudu properly, then you will go and pray, and then you have to do everything that's related to ibadat. So the things that you will be learning in these sessions, the things that I will be teaching you, it's not for my own advertisement, of course. It's not for the advertisement of the academy. It's the advertisement of the deen. These things you will be applying every day, 7, 8, 9, 10 times in a day. Because every one of us goes to washroom so many times. Everyone has to pray 5 times a day. Not 5 times, I would say 3 times a day at least. But 5 prayers that we have to offer. Everyone has to do fasting once in a year, 30 days. Everyone wants to know the masla of the homes because they have to take out once in a year. So all these things, we need to have good knowledge. If we don't have the right knowledge, then there will be problems coming in when we would be applying that, thinking that we're doing the right way, and we might not be doing those things in the right way. So the most important masla, or the basic masla, we already discussed about when we started our lecture last week. And that was not last week, sorry, last month. And we discussed the topic of taqleed. We discussed that why is it important for us to do taqleed? What are the proofs that we have? And what are the like some of the objections that people might bring in? And what are our possible answers during the time of imams? The imams say that you can refer to a non-masoom if you have some questions. So all of these things were being answered in some way. And alhamdulillah, we have been through that class. And now we will be discussing things that are practical to our lives. And inshallah, after the discussions we had, I think, and if brothers and sisters that have joined the class recently, or they are listening in online recently, and they don't know the background, so they can just go to Babylon website, or they can contact sister, and we can share the link and you can go through the lecture. So it is important for us to do taqleed, and once we have done the taqleed, now it's the time for us to act upon the things that are relevant to our daily lives. Now this is important, and I think I discussed that last time too when we were discussing the fiqh. Anything that has to do with your daily life, things that you have to go through daily life, and things that are not even daily life, things that you have to go through often in your life, you need to learn about it. There is no if and buts, right? Imagine if you are interacting with non-mahram. We need to have basic understanding the way we should interact with her. Or if a sister is interacting with a non-mahram, she needs to know the way that she needs to interact with a non-mahram, right? Likewise, we need to know the deen We need to have a good understanding of the religion in order for us to practice it really well, right? So likewise, the most important thing that you are doing in your life has to do with najasat and taharat. And today we will be discussing that. So one thing that before we start, there are some books that you can go and refer. There's a book that is just right in front of me. I have my laptop with me right now. It's called Jurisprudence Made Easy. This is from Ayatollah Sistani. And this is a beautiful, beautiful, it's not as difficult as Islamic laws. Usually for the other classes that I'm teaching in Ramadan, we are going through a little bit advanced text. And that advanced text is called Islamic laws, right? It's more like a Tawzihul Masail version in English. But this is a little bit easier, Jurisprudence Made Easy. And this is a really wonderful book. It's really good, very, very nicely translated. And this book, if you go through this, and hopefully you would be able to learn a lot. And it's done in a way that a son and a father is having a conversation or having a conversation. And while they're discussing the things, so father is explaining to son that what are the things that are relevant to deen and how should it be handled and what are the right ways to handle those, right? So it's a beautiful book. So I probably would use it as a textbook, I would say, because we need to have some textbook. And obviously, if there's a difference of opinion among the Marajir, so I would like to mention that too. And inshallah, so we would start it from now. There are basically 10 najasas that you need to keep in your mind. First is obviously urine. Second is the feces. Third is semen. Fourth is dead body. Mayyit. Fifth is blood. And then you have dog, then you have pig, then you have kafir, and not all kinds of kafir. Inshallah, more details will be followed. And then all alcoholic drinks, of course. And the 10th is the sweat of an animal who is eating the nijasa. Now, the 10th thing is not really relevant to us. Obviously, we're not living in the times where we have to confront the 10th thing. So we would probably skip this thing. If you want to read more about it, you can go through the book and you can read more. And the other things we would be discussing it, and I won't say in depth because obviously we are pretty limited with time, and it takes a lot of time to discuss those. So we will be pretty much going through the basic understanding of how to deal with it, and inshallah, once we have basic knowledge about it, then we are able to apply it in our lives, right? So in this lecture, I'll be pretty much discussing the najasa side. Inshallah, in the following lectures, we'll be discussing more about the taharat side. Like imagine if something gets najas, so how does it get najas and what are the things that make anything najas? Imagine this piece of cloth that I'm wearing, this jubba that I'm wearing right now, this garment that I have on my body, this is tahir, this is pak, right? How would it get najas, right? Those are the things that we'll be learning today. And if they have got najas, how would we make it tahir? How would we make it pak? That's a discussion that will be for the following classes. So we start with urine and feces. So every human being living on earth, every human being, their excrement or their droppings and the urines are najis, right? Secondly, every animal whose meat is haram for us to consume. This is important for us to understand. Marajirs generally, they have this ruling. There are two kinds of animal. One kinds of animal are those that are haram to consume. The other kinds of animal are those that are halal to consume. What are the animals that are halal to consume? They are cows, they are camels, goats, sheep, and all these kind of animals are halal to consume. Haram to consume are those like lion, cats, and mice, and all those kind of things. Rats. These are animals that we cannot consume, right? So within those animals that are halal to consume, their feces or their urine is not najis. Now you have to make a difference between things that are not najis and things that we can eat and drink. Sometimes when you tell these Muslims to the people, sometimes when you tell them the exact things, they're like, okay, if it's not najis, can I consume it? Of course, not everything that's halal, that's pak, is halal to consume, right? The earth where you're walking, right? It's pak, it's tahir. But can you eat the dust? Of course not. It's haram for us to consume. It's haram for us to eat, right? So you have to make a slight difference between the things that are najis or things that are pak and things that are allowed to consume, right? These are two different topics, and we should not intermingle them in a way that we get more confused, and it's more problematic for us to understand. So urine and feces, every human being on earth, the urine and feces are najis. All those animals whose blood gushes out. Now, this is an important terminology that you would have to keep in your mind, because every time when we will be discussing the topic of najasa, a lot of times you will be coming across this terminology. So there are two kinds of animals we have on earth. One, when you kill them, right, their blood comes out, but the blood just doesn't come out in a normal way. It gushes out because of the arteries they have in their body. So when you slaughter them, as soon as you slaughter them, the blood comes out like it just boils up on the top and then it goes down, right? So those animals are called what? Those animals whose blood gushes out. Then there are second kind of animals like fishes and the sea animals. And when you kill them and when they're being slaughtered, their blood doesn't gush out, right? Those kind of animals, their feces and their urine, if they have, it's not najis. It's pak. I mean, like if it touches your body or cloth or your garment, so your garments are still pak. But all those kinds of animals whose blood gushes out, then further down these animals, there are two kinds of animals. One that are halal to consume, and the second that are haram to consume, right? So we gave some example. The animals that are halal to consume, their blood and sorry, not their blood, the urine and their feces are pak if it touches your body. Like, let's take a more practical example that might help you. So if you go to Pakistan and India, right? I would talk about my own country, Pakistan. So sometimes when you go there, and sometimes when it's a time for Eid al-Adha, during that time you have a lot of cows, you have a lot of animals standing on the streets, and obviously they are throwing up, and obviously they are dropping off too. So sometimes it happens a lot that part of it would touch your body, or part of it would touch your garments, right? So at that point of time, if it touches your garments, obviously the best thing is to change them. But shar'an, you're not, like, even if you don't do it, and if you pray in those garments, or if you don't wash your body, and if you pray like that, then still you are fine, and your prayers are valid. Do you get my point? So these are the important things that we need to keep in our mind. Now the ruling for birds. So these were the ruling for the animals. Now the birds. Birds are like generally classified as animals, but here we'll just make a distinction between non-birds animals and the birds, right? So we already discussed that. So birds, there are two kinds of birds. There are some birds that are halal to consume, and there are some birds that are haram to consume. Halal birds include chicken. It can include pigeons. It can include different other kind of birds that are halal to consume. Then there are birds that are haram to consume. So there are some maraja. I think I'm not sure with the names, but maybe Atullah Khamnai too. He says that every kind of droppings of the birds, they're all the kinds of excrement that comes out of their body, they all are najis. We need to refrain ourselves from it. Ayatollah Sistani is of this view that the excrement that, or the droppings that comes out of the birds, be it halal to consume or be it haram to consume, they are fine, and it doesn't make your clothes and body najis. So this is the difference of opinion between the two maraja. And but you just need to keep in your mind, the better thing to do is just to be on the safe side, just to do more ihtiyat, because obviously you don't want to read if you see a dirty thing on your clothes, let alone if you see dropping on your clothes. But sometimes you might have to, the people are following, say, Sistani, they might have to come across a situation where they're running off time. And if they would change their clothes and if they would wash their bodies, obviously the time of the namaz will go. So at that point of time, it is important for them to pray first and then look after these things, right? The second thing is dead body, right? So dead body, or the carcass, is najis for all human beings. So every human being, as soon as they die, they are najis, right? Likewise, all the animals. Now, here we already discussed there are two kinds of animal: one whose blood gushes out, and the one whose blood doesn't gush out, right? So those animals whose blood gushes out, sorry, those kind of animals, when they die and when they're not being slaughtered properly. See, when I say dead body, it means they are not being slaughtered properly. If the animal is being slaughtered properly, then their body is pak, then their body is tahir. But let's suppose if they died because of an accident, or if they were not being slaughtered properly, at that point of time, we would say that they are dead body and the whole dead body is najis, right? But if they're being slaughtered properly, then the blood is najis, of course, but not the dead body itself, right? So imagine if the blood didn't reach out to the certain part of the bodies, right? So that if you touch it with your wet hand, it will still be fine. But human beings, then again, there are two kinds of human beings. Generally, for Muslim human beings, when they die and when they're not being given ghusl, so before ghusl, their body is najis. And if you touch the body after after a certain time, you might have to do ghusl masamayyat too. Inshallah, we'll discuss it when we'll discuss it more. But let's suppose if they are being given ghusl, 3 ghusls are supposed to be given. After that, their body becomes pak. Now, if you touch them, if you touch that body, that will be fine. There won't be any problem in it. Likewise, those body parts. So see, it can be the whole human being, or it can also be the body parts. Let's suppose this body part I have, God forbid, if my hands is slashed out, if my hands is decapitated, right? It just goes out of my body. So this whole hand that came out of my body would be najis. Likewise, if an animal, somehow their hands or their legs were being chopped off, they're still alive, but part of their body is taken out of their body parts, right? That body part would be najis too. But there are some exceptions. Exceptions are at those places. I won't go into that much details because this is for the little bit advanced or higher classes. But let's suppose, I'll just give you an example. I'll give you a general ruling and I'll give you a practical example that will be a source of helpful for us. Every human body part that doesn't contain ruh, right? And the scholars would explain you what does it mean. Inshallah, as I have said, it's for an advanced class if you will go into it. If it's being chopped off or if it comes out of your body, and then that thing is not najis, it's pak. So one of the really common example that I can give you are the skin that you see, the skin that you have to peel off sometimes. It might be on the top of your hand or on the fingers, or it can be like on your lips. So you see, like when you take the dead skin out, that dead skin is not najis, right? Because why? Because it doesn't have the ruh in it. If you just peel it off, it will be fine. So dead skin in your body, when you take it off, that's not najis. As per the ruling, it might have been najis, but the scholars make an exception for those body parts. And there are different body parts that they mention within an animal. It can also include some of their body parts, like their bones and other things that we can count within it. So inshallah, when we will be discussing a little bit into details, then I can, of course, can go into those things in a little bit more depth. The fourth thing is blood. So again, keep in your mind, every animal and human being, obviously human being would take it separate. Human being's blood is completely najis. Every animal's whose blood gushes out, their blood is najis, right? So irrespective they're halal to consume or haram to consume, irrespective they are birds or they're non-birds animals, unless until if you slaughter them and if their blood gushes out, their blood is najis completely, right? And that thing, even we have to be a little bit mindful. Sometimes the blood comes out of your teeth, from your jaws, or inside the mouth. So sometimes we don't realize, we just consume it and we just take it into our stomach, right? That's not right. If the blood is into an amount which is where you can taste the blood exclusively, then you need to throw it out into a basin, or you need to throw it out completely, right? There is an exception that if the blood comes out and if it mixes with saliva in a way that you cannot have the taste of blood anymore, And in that way, you can just consume it and you can just like take it into your stomach, right? But generally, the ruling is that when the blood comes out, you just have to be a little bit mindful. And if it doesn't mix with saliva properly, you need to throw it out from your mouth, right? Because it is najis, and consuming anything najis is not allowed, right? So that's the fourth thing. Uh, Fifth thing is dogs and pigs, right? We also had this thing classes, right? But inshallah, if you would have an exclusive class that won't be telecast live, I would be having a special session with brothers only. And inshallah, one of our sister would have a class specifically with the women and with the girls. And in that class, I'll be discussing that najasa a little bit in details, and I would be discussing what you have to do, what are the ways you have to clean it, and what ghusl we have to do later on. So that thing is for the higher classes or for an exclusive class that we will have. And obviously, that class we won't telecast it online because I'm not sure. We will have a more discussion over it, inshallah, but it will be only boys exclusive class that we will have, and I'll discuss more about that najasa. Dogs and pigs, every kind of dog is najis, and the pigs are najis too. And the practical implication is obviously really high for us. So let's imagine like in your neighborhood, you have a dog, and just by your neighbor, they are taking the dog to a walk, and somehow it rained, and they came in and they met you. And while they were meeting you, the dog, like brushed out completely, and it did it in a way that like drops of the water, it came on your body, right? And the dog was wet, or the dog touched your body in a way, or he did, like, obviously for dogs, there's he dog and she dog, of course, right? But of course, right, like if it touches your body in a way, I'll tell you the example, I'll tell you the more explanation of how things get najis, so you will get to understand more. But imagine if the dog is wet and it touches your body, right? It happens a lot here in Canada, right? And it doesn't happen with pigs, but definitely with dogs, right? So in that case, you have to purify your body in case if it touched your body, or if it touched your garment, and if the dog was wet, or if the dog was not wet, your garment was wet, and the dog touched the body or the garment in a way that the wetness was transferred from one body to another, then in that way you have to purify yourself. Then we have kafir that are being called najas. Now the kafir are of different types. Some kafirs are those that claim themselves as Muslims. Some kafirs are those that claim themselves explicitly non-Muslims, right? So with those kafirs, let's talk about those kafirs that explicitly call themselves as non-Muslims. So for those kind of kafirs, you just need to keep one thing in your mind. There are two kinds of kafirs, right? One that are being given book, and the one that are not being given books, right? So the people that are being given books are generally Jews and Christians. Now there is a difference of opinion when it comes to Majusis, right? So are they people of books or not? There's a really long discussion of Sayyid Sistani on it, and obviously it doesn't concern us a lot. So I won't discuss that topic into more detail, but generally the Maraji of presently, only few Marajas, as far as I know, like if people would follow Ayatollah Bashir Nashri or scholars like these, they say that every kind of kafir is najas. So we have to refrain ourselves from every kind of kafir. And if they give you something in which their wet hands were used, we cannot consume them, right? But generally, the marajid that we are following and the students are following the class, or the people that are following our lectures are following the marajir. Generally, people would follow Ayatollah Sayyidul Hakim, and after that, Ayatollah Khui, and Ayatollah Khomeini, and Ayatollah Sistani, and Ayatollah Khamenei, and Ayatollah Wahid al-Khurasani, and all these kind of marajas, right? So generally, these marajas says, not sure about Ayatollah Wahid al-Khurasani, but the other maraja, I'm pretty sure, they say that the people of book, Jews and Christians, are pak, right? So imagine if they made cookies for you, and if they have used their red hands, and even then, if they are offering you cookies, or they're offering you some things that they have made in their homes, and provided that they haven't used the meat, they're not using any meat stuff. Everything that they have used is vegetarian or is non-meat stuff, right? Generally, it happens a lot. You go to your school, you go to offices, they will give you cookies or they'll give you something in which they have used their wet hands in making it. In those situations, it is completely fine for us to use that because, as per the Marajir, the contemporary scholars, both Christians and Jews and the people of book, they are classified as pak. Now, the people that are that don't fall under this category, right? These people are called najas, right? So they would include Hindus, they would include Sikhs, they would include the other non-Muslims, and every non-Muslim basically. So Buddhists, like people that follow Jainism, the people that follow Hinduism, the people that follow Sikhism, so every kind of these kafirs, non-Muslims, if you know that they have made something in which they have used their wet hands and which or their body have touched something which was wet, right? So in that situation, you cannot consume that. More things would be followed. Just don't get confused. Now, it's not that every restaurant you're going, you're not taking the you're not going to Tim Hortons, you're not going to these places just because someone is working there. You don't have to be you don't have to think like that. Inshallah, I'll explain the masla more as we follow more, but I just want to give you some headlines. Likewise, so this was for the non-Muslim people that declare themselves explicitly as non-Muslims. Within Muslims, we have people that claim themselves as Muslims, but they are not Muslims, right? Some of them include, and this is important for our children and also for our parents to keep in their mind, some of them people within our own community are those that call Amir al-Mu'mineen as Allah, right? As God, you know. They are Wallat, explicitly Najis. So if you know someone calling Amir al-Mu'mineen as Allah or one of any of the Ahlul Bayt as Allah or equivalent to Allah, then in that scenario, if they are doing it because of their ignorance, you can probably explain them and you can correct them in a better way. But if they are really adamant and if they are really obsessed about the things that they have said and they won't back down on the things that they are saying, in that situation, they would be considered as ghali or ghullat, and they would be classified as najis. Likewise, nawasib. Nawasib are those people that clearly say from their mouth, or they would indicate from their mouth about their hatred towards Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Imagine if a Nasbi comes and if would say, I don't like Amir al-Mu'mineen, I don't like Imam Hassan, I hate them. So if they have made it really explicit, then they are Nasbis. For Nasbis, even if they offer you something, even if they offer you food or anything, you cannot consume them because they are Najas. Likewise, we have some people, even in Canada, even in Pakistan, but you can see them more in Canada. If you go a little bit towards the one region, they're called Ahmadis, Qadianis, right? So they claim there is a prophet that came in after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So obviously we believe that there is no prophet after Prophet Muhammad. They believe that there is a prophet, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani, that came after Prophet Muhammad. So obviously for these kind of people too, they are najis too, and we have to refrain ourselves. And even if they give you something and you know their red hands were using it, imagine, like, just remember this word, if you know their wet hands were used, because this is an important component that I'll be explaining more. So this was something that has to do with kafir. And finally, we have wine or alcoholic drinks. So and alcoholic drinks obviously are najis. So all these beers and wines that you see. So if someone is having the party in your neighborhood and somehow part of it came to your driveway, or someone has thrown wine on your driveway or something happened of that kind, then it gets najis, of course, right? There is a slight distinction that you have to make between the alcoholic drink that we are talking about and the alcohol that is used industrially. So the alcohol that is being used industrially, that you use in your perfumes, that you use in your, even some of it is also used in making of food, right? So those kind of alcohol, as per say Sistani and other marajis too, they are fine and they doesn't make your body or your garments najis. So that solves a huge problem, because a lot of times when you go and when you see the ingredients, or when you see You have bought a really hefty perfume, a really expensive one, and then you see it has written alcohol on it, right? Then people might just get confused and they would think it's najis. So if we apply it on our clothes will get najis too. But you have to make a distinction between the alcohol that is being consumed and the alcohol that is being drank. That thing is najis, but something that is used industrially for making of perfumes or for making of things like paints or these kind of things, the Maraja states it's completely fine and they're not najis. And if you apply those perfumes are completely fine to apply. So there's another thing that we just don't know much about it, and it is important for us to keep it in mind. And that thing is called foka, beer. It's usually the barley water. I'm not sure about the Barbican, but some of our youth, they generally like that Barbican a lot, right? I have to investigate it further, but there are some scholars that I have heard. They call that it foka. It's again for a little bit advanced classes, but the beer drink that you have, or those kind of like drinks that make you energized, right? I'm not sure, like I haven't consumed it, of course, right? But I have seen it people buying that Red Bull or those kind of things. You should refrain from drinking those two because although they're not alcohol explicitly, but they're still foka. Foka is najis and it is haram for us to consume. So these were some of the nijasa that we should refrain. And sometimes if it touches our body or garments, we need to clean ourselves, right? Now, what are the ways that you can prove a nijasa? Now, this is important. First way is that there are two just people, there are two adil people that came to you. Let's suppose there are two maulanas that you trust. Two maulana, even if you don't trust, but there are adil people, right? So they came to you and they say, like, we saw this thing and it's najis. So at that point of time, you need to refrain from that thing and you would consider that thing as najis. That's one way of proving it. Second way of proving is that if there is someone reliable, right? If someone reliable, let's suppose in your workplace, you are working with a colleague who's not even a Muslim. That colleague said to you, oh, bro, like, my blood just fell on the table and I just cleaned it, right? So if that person is trustworthy and if you can trust him, and obviously there are generally trustworthy people. So at that point of time, and at that stage, you would also consider that thing as najis, even though that trustworthy person or the reliable person can be a non-Muslim, let alone a Muslim, let alone anyone from your family that says it. Thirdly, let's suppose if someone is using an instrument, and if that person or an instrument or a carpet or anything, like someone is using a brush, someone is using a pen, and that person says to you that this thing is najis. So since he's called sahibul yad, someone who's using that thing, because he's using that thing would also be classified as najis. So these are the three things that generally we don't encounter a lot, but sometimes we would encounter. So just for your information, I mention it. The fourth thing is the most important thing. And the fourth thing is that these were the three ways. The fourth way, which is generally that we come across a lot, is your own conviction. We need to be convinced ourselves. We need to have this conviction within our mind that this thing is najis. Now, this solves so many problems, of course. And this solves so many times that you go to Tim Hortons, you see someone working there who is not a Muslim, of course, who's not even a Jew or a Christian, who is maybe a Sikh, maybe a Hindu. He's working in a restaurant, right? And now you're just thinking, can I get this coffee that he's making or she's making? Of course you can. Why? Because you need to have your own conviction, and the conviction can only come in if you have seen it through your eyes. If you have not seen it through your eyes, right? So, remember when I was discussing these masail, I was mentioning every now and then that if you know that they have used their red hands, if you know, remember this word, if you know. Now, if you're unsure, you're just thinking probably they might have used it. Maybe they might not have used it. Since you are in a doubt, in that stage of doubt, you should think that that particular thing is tahir, is pak. So imagine if someone brings a Tim Hortons for you. Now you don't have to investigate. Oh, the Tim Hortons that you brought me, brother, Was that who were the workers working there? Were they Muslims? Were they non-Muslims? If they were non-Muslim, were they Jew? Were they non-Jew? Were they Christian? Were they non-Christians? If they were non-Christian, did they use their hands or didn't they use their hands? You don't have to investigate anything. Even if you can investigate, that's a beautiful Muslim, I'm telling you. Even if you can investigate, you don't have to investigate. Imagine there is water that you see or something liquid that you see on the floor. Now you're being confused. Is that a urine or is that water? And you can probably ask someone who's just right sitting there, and you can probably ask them, look, I need to know if that's urine or if that's liquid, any other kind of liquid, because it has touched my body or garment. You can easily ask that person, but still you don't have to investigate. You can think in your mind, since I'm doubtful, I don't care. I would take that thing as pak. So this solves so many questions and so many problems of your day. Imagine if in a rainy day, you're going into a bus and you're just thinking that there's a water inside and it's going off the jacket of a person that you think is a non-Muslim. The water falling from that jacket, would that be pak or would that be najis? The Sharia tells you, since you're in a doubt, since you don't know, since you are not convinced yourself, that thing should be taken as pak, right? And finally, I think I have run over the time a lot, and I might have to explain a little bit. I'll explain this thing a little bit more, inshallah. How clean things become najis, I think that might need a little bit of more time. But just keep in your mind, if it's dry, if let's suppose my hand is najis, this hand is najis right now, it got najis, and now it's dry. If I touch my dry hand to a dry body that's najis, my dry hand doesn't get najis. The pak one doesn't get najis, right? The only way a thing can get najis is that if there is liquid in one of them and that liquid transfers from one body to another. Just keep this thing in your mind, inshallah. The next class that we will be starting, I will be discussing about this masla specifically more, and we'll be discussing the types of water and things. And inshallah, I think the tahara thing would probably take 2 sessions at least, because it's a detailed topic. And hopefully with this class, a lot of your masli and masail, I know I wouldn't have provided solution for all of them, but still a lot of the things would have been covered till now. So I will leave the floor for questions, and we have few minutes left. So we'll try to wrap up within the time. If there are some questions that are left over, I'm going to address them like exclusively through the sister, and I'll answer that, even if you have questions after the class. Go ahead. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Yes, students, you can ask questions now.
Okay, sorry, sister, one thing. I'm so sorry I took your name wrongly in the class. It's Sister Afsha, and mashallah, she's doing a wonderful job. And it's just to tell that she's putting a lot of hard work, and everyone should definitely take her help in order if they want to enroll in the class. And just pray for us too, and especially for Sister Afsha, the amount of effort she's putting in. Go ahead.
Yeah. Please, students, turn on your cameras and start asking questions. It was really interesting topic today. Even for me, it was a lot of knowledge. Please, go ahead.
I have one question.
Yes, Brother Sajjad, go ahead.
The question is there any pet that is not najis, any part of their body is najis that you can keep in a household?
Yeah, it's a good question. So every pet exclusively, except for dog and pig, you can keep them. Their whole body is pak. Their whole body is, they don't have a problem. But if the pet is an animal who's like we cannot consume them, if they are not halal, then obviously their urine and their feces would be najis. So let's suppose if they do excrement in your house anywhere, then you have to clean that part of it exclusively. But generally you can keep cats, you can keep all those kind of things. It's completely fine. There's no problem in doing that.
Okay, I have another question. But it's about a pet as well. So for example, if you're just walking to school, okay, and the
Yeah.
dog comes, and
Yeah.
the dog comes and like starts smelling your clothes. Like, will my clothes be considered najis after that?
No, inshallah, we'll be discussing more in the subsequent class that what makes a thing najis. Generally, you have to think in your mind if they're sniffing. If sniffing doesn't make anything najis. It's usually if they're licking it. Licking makes things najis because at that point of time, they are actually transferring the wetness from their tongue onto your body, onto your garments, right? So
Yeah,
the
okay.
licking part is like surely will make your thing najis. But if they're just sniffing and smelling, so that wouldn't be a problem.
But their nose is wet. Their nose is wet and their nose is touching.
Yeah. If it's wet and if you know that that wetness has come to your body, right? If you are sure, if you have the conviction, then obviously that would be najis too. But if you're just
Okay.
doubting that thing might have come in or might not have come in, so Sharia gives you the rule and gives you a really easy way that you should think it's not transferred. It's back.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, just have this thing in your mind. You have to have 100% conviction. Even if
Okay.
you're 80-20 or 85-15, 85% you think it's a najis, 15% you're thinking it might be pak, then you should go for that 80 then you should go for that 15%, because Sharia
Okay.
doesn't want you to be like that's just following up. It's for every student, it's for every student that's listening. Is Sharia doesn't want you to be waswasi. We have seen people that have become waswasi completely. They have so much doubt in their mind and they act upon their doubts. So they would clean the house 15-20 times a day. They will wash their hands every time. Why? Because they don't follow the Sharia the way it needs to be followed. If I go to, even if you buy a home from a non-Muslim, and if you are unsure that the parts of the homes are najis or not, you should think in your mind that every corner of the house is pak, right? You need to see from your eyes, right? You need to see from your eyes to understand that something has become najis or not, right? So this is a great leeway Sharia has given it, and we should always take the benefit out of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any questions?
I have a
Hassan?
question.
Yeah,
Yes,
go
brother
ahead.
Hassan. Go ahead.
Are you allowed to keep dogs as like a guard pet if you live like on?
Oh yeah, of course. Look, with dogs, it's a whole topic of keeping them as a pet or not. It's not an answer that I can give you like in a minute or two, because there's so much discussion over this topic. And Atullah Sistani was going through the work that he has done, so it included a lot of like if and buts. But just to give you the answer for the question you have specifically, so if you have kept the dog for protection purpose, then no maraje has any problem with doing it. You can keep them and it's completely fine, because you're using it for something which makes sense. You need protection for your house. So you can keep them in the backyard, you can keep them at the front. That thing is allowed. The problem only comes in when you're using them as a pet and when you're keeping them in the home. Can you even buy it is the first problematic thing that comes in, because buying a nijasa or selling a nijasa itself, it's not allowed. If you go through the books of makasib or like the transactions, right, there are a lot of problems on buying and selling the ainun nijasa. Since dog and pigs are ainun nijasa, there is even a problem of buying and selling it. You cannot even buy it or you cannot even sell it, right? That's a separate discussion that we can have. But if you're doing it for something that has to do with protection, then it's completely fine. There's no problem in it.
Okay. And also if you keep a cat as a pet and it leaves its hairs on like your rugs and like for example your janamas.
Yeah. See, the hair of the cat are not najis, right? The hair are fine. But the problem comes in if it's in your garment, right? There are some maraji that says that even if one hair of the cat is on your clothes, uh, like maybe on your trouser, maybe the shirt that you're wearing, and if you pray in it knowingly, then it's a problematic thing. Then your prayers are not valid, right? But say Sistani, he says that if there's one or two, it's fine. But if there are more than one or two, let's suppose 3, 4, or 5, then it's a problematic thing too. So that's one problem that you might come across, but you can just solve that in a way that every time you're going to a prayer, you should have an exclusive room, small portion, not even a room, a small portion where the cat doesn't come in. And you can have a separate dress altogether. You might just have one kurta, the one that I'm wearing, the huge one, the Arabi one, and you can just put it on every time you're going for prayers, and you can just keep it exclusively. So you would never have this problem, inshallah.
I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
So for example, if you're for example, like there are a lot of non-halal fast food chains in Canada,
Yeah.
like Burger King and like McDonald's. Is it okay? Like, is it halal to buy non-meat items from the menu?
Yeah, I mean, I would only answer you if you would have me fries and ice cream from McDonald's, right? That's fine. I'm just joking. See, the thing is that I go to McDonald's, I get fries and I get ice cream. It's completely fine. There's no problem in it. You can always buy non-meat stuff from these places. But you can do a little bit more investigation. Generally, the fryers that they're using for French fries and the fryer that they're using for the meat products are different. They're two. It doesn't make any problem. So French fries are done in a different fryer, and the meat is done in a different fryer, right? The ice cream, there's no problem altogether because they don't use any fryer or anything, right? They just use a machine and then they give you the ice cream, right? Or let's suppose coffee or those kind of things. So obviously there's no problem buying any halal thing from a non-halal chain. There is no problem in it.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to clarify one thing, brother. What about buying a pizza, vegetarian pizza? They cut these slices and they give you. So if you're again.
Oh yeah, see, that's a really practical question. Like usually what I would do, or when we go and if you want to buy a bagel, I'll give you a bagel example because that has happened practically, right? So let's suppose you go and buy a bagel, right? So bagels, they have one specific knife that they're using it for everything. Even if they have to cut down a sandwich that includes bacon, they would do from the same knife. And if they would have to do something non-veg, something vegetarian, they would still use the same knife. So what we generally request them is that, brother, can you or sister, can you just maybe use a plastic knife or something like that? And if you please don't use the other kind of knife when you're putting on the butter or when you're putting on the cream, or even if you're cutting it down. So that's one way of trying to making it a little bit easier. But the other thing, if they are using the same kind of like cutter to put down into the pieces, the pizza pieces. So at that point of time, I'll be careful and I wouldn't consume that because I know that they are pretty much cutting the najis stuff from it. And obviously there might be traces of that thing. And if you cut down the halal thing too, there might be traces of that najis thing coming onto the halal thing. So at that point of time, you might request them, can you please use a different knife altogether? Can you please use that? Or can you use a different cutter if you can use that? And obviously, if they can use that, then at that point of time, it's better for you to refrain from it.
Thank you. Jazakallah. Are there more questions? Otherwise, we are running short of time. We can just end our program with dua. And please turn on your cameras and recite dua Imam Zamana with the teacher.
So there are no questions, I guess. So even if someone has a question, sometimes people might just feel a little bit shy on coming on the camera and asking the questions. So it's completely fine. I can completely understand. But see, these things has to do, and they will go with you for your whole life. This lecture that I have given, and I'm not exaggerating, this Nijasa and Tahara thing, the 3-4 classes that will be coming across, you will be applying them 10 times in a day to your life, right? So 10 times in a day at least. Or you can probably apply that more. It depends. So if you have to apply something so often and so frequent, so if I would be you, I would take out all the questions that are coming into my mind. Don't be shy when it comes to the matter of deen. Don't be like, see, it's a little bit difficult when you're starting in, but when you are into this topic, then you don't feel difficult when you're asking the question. Don't feel shy. If you're feeling shy, then message me or message sister exclusively, and we will be able to answer you through audios, because I want my kids and my students to be educated properly. And everyone that's listening to it, they might have 20,000 questions coming in their mind. Ask all those 20,000 questions, because your question can also help another person that might have the same question in their mind, but probably they don't have the himma to go and ask them openly, right? So please let the questions come in. We are running short of time, but that doesn't mean that I cannot answer the questions later. Every time anyone has any question, they can contact Bowlin Society or like Bakrul Ulum Academy or the sister. We're glad to help you, inshallah. So Dua Imam is Amana, and please everyone can turn on their mic and can turn on their camera, as sister said. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Everyone together, please. اللهم كن لي وليك حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائي في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات على محمد.